So, so this Krishna consciousness is actually meant for going back to Godhead. In fact, Prabhupada got this magazine also, Back to Godhead. So that is very clear that our goal is to go out of this material world. That is actually called Nivritti Marga. And Prabhupada is saying that it is little difficult to understand, but it's very easy to, but it is very easy if one take to Krishna consciousness seriously and tries to understand Krishna. So having lack of understanding of Krishna and also lack of understanding of our true position, then because of one having not, because of one does not have the understanding of the spiritual life, in the spiritual world, so it's very difficult for the living entity actually to give up this material world. It's very, very difficult. That's why he's saying that it is a little difficult to understand, but it is very easy if one takes to Krishna consciousness. Because then we get full information about the Lord, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and also about his abode, and the description about his abode and the quality of life there. Everything is there in the scriptures. In Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, it is there. So when one understands, Krishna and Krishna's abode and the Krishna conscious life, then it's easy, for one to actually come to the path of Nivritti Marga and understand the purpose of life is not to enjoy in this material world, but to go back home to God. So saying a Krishna conscious person can understand that performing yajna according to Karma Kanda system is a useless waste of time. So there are two main problems of the living entity who are in this material world. The first is Karma Kanda. Basically, everybody wants to enjoy. Material enjoyment is the goal of every living entity in this material world. So that's why this Karma Kanda section of the Vedas may look very attractive to living entities, because that is very much in line with what they want. They want material enjoyment. Okay, there are certain ways you can enjoy material life. The Karma Kanda section is given like that. But that is actually an obstacle. The good part of it is that at least they're following some Vedic authority, and there is chance that they get gradual purification and understand that this part of material enjoyment is no good. Eventually, one has to come to that understanding. But if one doesn't come to that understanding, if it goes on being attached to Karma Kanda, that's a problem. That's a problem there. So there is a purpose for which the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas are there. That's why he says, Krishna says, Vedeshu sarve aham eva vedya. One should know the purpose of the Vedas. When the purpose of the Vedas is not understood, then one can get stuck in Karma Kanda section, and then many lives just can go on like that. And it's very gradual purification. some point of time he has to understand the purpose. Otherwise, he may just remain stuck. Now, another kind of problem is Jnana Kanda, or mental speculation. Because they may understand that some kind of futility of this material enjoyment, they may have some frustration. So then they want to speculate and want to merge with the Lord, not having a proper understanding. So simply they want to get out of all the troubles, but not having the understanding of the real life in the spiritual world. So then they speculate. They try to speculate the Vedas. They will read and try to speculate on their own and try to see how we can get rid of all the miseries. So that path also, the path of speculation also, is not going to be fruitful in terms of attaining the perfection of our life. So this he quotes the verse, Karma Kanda, Jnana Kanda, Kevala Vishera Bhan. So liberation, so-called liberation from material miseries also doesn't solve problem. One only aspires for liberation without having the understanding of the abode of the Lord and taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, serving the Lord. If that understanding is not there, then that kind of liberation also doesn't solve the problem, because the living entity still remains in his unnatural position. He is not still his natural position, and that's why he's not happy. So it is considered to be poison, because that way he will never be happy. It's poison only. And because of that, he has to again, so Karma Kanda, one who follows, anyway he has to take so many species of life, he has to take birth. And those who are following Jnana Kanda, they may go, apparently they may sometimes go to Brahmajyoti, but they again have to fall. Arui Krishna Param Padam Tataha. Because they're not taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, again they have to fall. So that way, they will also have to take many, many births in this material world. So that's why he's saying that both are like poison pot. So as devotees also, this kind of tendencies may be there, karma kanda and jnana kanda. That's why this verse is there, no? Anya bilashita shunyam jnana karmadhi anavritam. So jnana karmadhi anavritam. That is also being mentioned because that contamination is there, because that is a mentality actually. So we may not be following the process of karma kanda and jnana, but there is tendency, there is a mentality like that. Sometimes we may follow the process of Krishna consciousness, ritualistically to get some kind of material enjoyment. There's a mentality like that. And same way, we may have mentality to speculate, tendency to speculate, and also be more eager for just getting rid of the miseries rather than submitting to the Lord and taking the process of Krishna consciousness seriously. So that's why when we read Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, we get purified of all those mentalities, because Bhagavatam explains very nicely the futility of this material. So much it describes. And so many characters are there also in Bhagavatam, those who wanted the path of material enjoyment, but they got frustrated. Since we can see the example of Purva also. So much he tried to enjoy, but he ultimately got frustrated. Same way, Devayati Maharaj also got frustrated. And then we find like our Hiranyakashipu. He also got so much of facility for material enjoyment, wanted to become the emperor of the entire world. He became also, but then still he was not satisfied. Bhagavatam says he was not satisfied. So, Prachin Barishat, that is also mentioned that how he was doing so much of yajna. But later when Narada Muni explained him about the futility of this kind of karma kanda, then he actually got to the right understanding. So you can see that for the jiva, it's the tendency is there, because that's a very root of very disease of the conditions that they want to enjoy material life. They have material enjoyment tendency. So so Bhagavatam actually talks so much in detail the frustration, the futility of material enjoyment, the path of material enjoyment, with so many varieties of examples through different characters in Srimad Bhagavatam. We can clearly understand how the sun gratification or the path of material enjoyment, it leads to misery only. There is no tangible benefit for the living entity. And living entity remains stuck in this material world and it suffers unlimitedly. So that understanding one can easily get. So that's why again and again the path of material enjoyment is condemned in Srimad Bhagavatam. And same way, the path of liberation or the speculation, basically the merging, trying to get rid of this material misery, the miseries of material existence, but not taking shelter of the Lord. Even that is also Bhagavatam discourages. So that's what's dharma projate kaitava nirmat saranam. So this all varieties of dharma, either it's karma kanda or path of mental speculation, trying to merge in the Supreme Lord, it's all actually cheating. There is no good to there. So that's why one who sticks to Guru Sadhu Shastra, one can easily purify these tendencies of karma kanda and jnana kanda. And one can be situated on the platform of bhakti, which is the highest path. Otherwise, one can just remain stuck in this material world. So that's why the goal has to be always be reminded, and one should be fixed on that the goal is to go back to God. That is very clear. So in 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita also, there's a nice verse which talks about what it takes one to go back to Godhead. 15.6. Nice verse. No, yeah, 15.5 and 6. 15.5 verses says about what the qualities one should have to go back to Godhead. This is Nirmana Moha Jita Sanga Dosha Adhyatma nitya vinivritta kama Tvander murmukta Sukha dukkha samnay Gachanti amoda padamavyayam tat. So those are free from false prestige, illusion, and false association, who understand the eternal, who are done with material lust, who are freed from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who, unbewildered, know how to surrender to the Supreme Person and attain to that eternal kingdom. So he explains about what way one can attain the eternal kingdom. In the next verse, he talks about the supreme abode of mind is not illumined by sun and moon, nor by fire or electricity. Those who reach it never return to this material world. So here Prabhupada makes a nice statement. He says, one should be captivated by this information. He should desire to transfer himself to that eternal world and extricate himself from this false reflection of reality. For one who is too much attached to this material world, it is very difficult to cut that attachment. But if he takes to Krishna consciousness, there is a chance of gradually becoming detached. So one has to associate himself with devotees, those who are in Krishna consciousness. One should search out a society dedicated to Krishna consciousness. Which is that society? Dedicated to Krishna consciousness. It's gone. Saying one should search out a society dedicated to Krishna consciousness. Learn how to discharge devotional service. In this way, he can cut off his attachment to the material world. One cannot become detached from this attraction of material world simply by dressing himself in saffron cloth. He must become attached to the devotional service of the Lord. Therefore, one should take it very seriously, that devotional service as described in 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And then, 14th chapter, the contamination of all kinds of processes by material nature is described. Only devotional service is described as purely transcendental. So in this purport also, Prabhupada says this point. It is difficult to understand, but it is very easy if one takes to Krishna consciousness seriously. 2 times. Here also seriously, and there also is saying one should seriously take up the process of Krishna consciousness. When one does that, then one can easily understand and one can easily become ready to go back to Godhead. And one has to be captivated by this information. So one thing I just want to discuss a little bit on this point of, say, the first qualification is that one should not be deluded by pride. So, see, I was thinking that how Krishna consciousness is such a beautiful process, that because it works at the root and it solves the problem. So that little bit we'll see that how it actually works like that. So he says, conditioned soul is puffed up, thinking the lot of material nature. So he Prabhupada defines here, pride means being puffed up. And being puffed up means, he says, thinking wants us to be lord of this material nature. And then it becomes very difficult to surrender. So I was thinking that how this, how we can understand this and how Krishna consciousness actually solves this problem. And because Prabhupada also here says that, if one takes to Krishna consciousness seriously and tries to understand Krishna. So the pride, what he says, when we think that we are the Lord of this material nature. So the conditioned soul, the living entity, when it comes in this material world, then he thinks that I am the center of this entire world. And everything is meant for my enjoyment. So now he may know that, that, okay, certain tract of land, is only mine. Other things are not mine. But the whole perspective of the conditioned soul is that he always sees in terms of how everything in this material world is either now for my enjoyment or potentially for my enjoyment. Now, some things may not be there right now under his custody, or he may not have access. But he's always have that perspective that how I can work hard and get access of all the things in this world. The Hiranyakashipu, he wanted access to enjoy the entire material world. So he wanted to become the Adhipati of this entire material creation only and kill Lord Vishnu. So Hiranyakashipu is showing this is what the desire of the divinity is. Basically, what he wants is he wants to unlimitedly enjoy. Everything is meant for my enjoyment. Somehow, right now, I'm not having the access to all the things. But his mentality is like that. He wants to have everything under his custody. And we can see also those who possess anything in this material world. The greed to possess doesn't stop. They want to possess more. When they possess something, then they want to possess more. And that's how they keep working hard. Keep working hard. more, more, more. It goes on and on and on. So why it goes on and on? Because he thinks that I am the Lord. So if you see the purpose is I am the Lord of material nature. So Lord of material nature means he assumes that actually I'm entitled. I'm entitled to have everything for my enjoyment. And maybe I'm not having right now somehow. But I'll work hard and I'll get it. Some or the other I have to get it. So I'm entitled. I'm actually the Lord of material nature. That way Jiva thinks. So like to have that puffed up nature, it's not required that we have something in position right now. Every conditioned soul is puffed up. Like somebody may be possessing $1 billion. We may say no, that person is puffed up. He is likely to be puffed up. But somebody is a beggar. No, he has hardly anything. The pennies only is having. So actually, or he doesn't have anything. Let's say he just on the street, nothing he has. He still is puffed up. Even though he may not having, but he thinks that I am supposed to get. So maybe I should do something by which I will possess more and more. But so he thinks that I'm entitled for possessing everything, meant for my enjoyment. So basically, this whole mentality that I am the enjoyer, everything is meant for my enjoyment, and then having this understanding that actually I am supposed to be the Lord of this material nature. I am the Lord of material nature, and somehow right now I'm not in a position, but I will get it. Having that hope, and that's what divinity wants to do. That so whole life goes in just trying to get that position of being a Lord of material nature. He assumed that we are, but we have to just a little bit work hard and we get it. We become the Lord of material nature that way. So, but he says one should know that, one should know by cultivation of real knowledge that he is not Lord of material nature. Krishna is the Lord of material nature, Supreme Personality God. So this is what happens in Krishna consciousness. The first thing we are taught who is Krishna. So Krishna is the Lord of material nature. Krishna is Sarvaloka Maheshwara. As far as that Bhuktaram Jagatapsam Sarvaloka Maheshwara. Suhridam Sarvbhutanam. So as soon as we understand, oh, I am not the Lord of anything here. Krishna is the Lord of everything. And I am not the enjoyer. Krishna is the enjoyer of everything. So as soon as this understanding comes, as soon as this perspective comes by transcendental knowledge, when one understands this point, then by cultivation of this consciousness, this Krishna consciousness, and understanding Krishna is the Lord of material nature, and Krishna is the enjoyer, then one will give up that kind of mentality that things are meant for my enjoyment and I am supposed to be the Lord of things. No, Krishna is a Lord eternally. Even something may be there right now in my possession. For that also, Krishna is only the Lord. He is only the proprietor. For that also. So whole perspective changes. So instead of thinking of lording over and enjoying, one starts thinking, how can I engage all that from Krishna's service? And that is humility. That is giving a puffed up nature. So it's actually a state of consciousness by which one sees everything is meant for Krishna's enjoyment. Everything is, Lord is the proprietor. So Krishna consciousness is, externally speaking, we may not understand. Like sometimes we say, humility. Who is a humble devotee? Humility doesn't mean that he'll have head like this and he'll just do like this, Hare Krishna. So that may be some expression, but the point is, it's a consciousness. So the consciousness, nirmana, it's, being prideless. So that means when he honestly admits that everything belongs to Krishna and everything is meant for his enjoyment, and he acts only for the pleasure of the Lord, that everything should be used for Lord's service. That is being prideless. So even if somebody is billionaire or somebody may be very poor, it doesn't matter. When he has that perspective, then he will offer everything, or he will see everything in that way. That everything is meant for Krishna's enjoyment, and he is not the Lord. Krishna is the Lord. That is real humility. So now in this world, people, when they forget this, when they are not Krishna conscious, when they don't understand this, then even so, say suppose they are following karma kanda and all, they are very pious. So pious people, what they will say, okay, now I legitimately I did whatever yagya and all that, yagya dana tapa, I did my karma kanda process. Now I got certain wealth, I got certain wife, I got certain husband, I got certain kind of promotion or whatever they got. promotion to heavenly planets also they got. So then they think that now I am entitled to enjoy, and I possess this, and I'm legitimate, possessor of this particular asset, and I am having the legitimate authority to enjoy this. This is what karmakanda people, those are mentality like that think. So in that way, actually, that is also mentality of a thief, because they're not acknowledging it's actually for Lord. It is actually owned by the Lord and is meant for Lord's enjoyment. So that's a mistake, So basically, this path of Pravritti Marga, it is that Prabhupada is writing here because they lack understanding of Krishna. So, and that's why it is difficult for them to give up this path. But Bhakti Yoga and the path of transcendental knowledge, because we get enlightened with this understanding that who is Krishna and how Krishna owns everything, then one can get rid of this disease. So now even so-called pious person also, even like say some tract of land is there. Now he's very honest person. So he says, okay, it is in my name, and he does whatever he does in his land, and he doesn't disturb others' land. He's not encroaching and all that. He's very honest. And then he pays money and he gets some more land, and now he thinks, now this is my land. So in the society, he may be seen as a very honest person. But actually, if you see from the Krishna conscious perspective, because he's not acknowledging it is owned by the Lord, and he's not inquiring, how can I use this tract of land which belongs to the Lord in the service of the Lord? So that way he becomes thief again in the eyes of the Lord. He's thief. It's like suppose some people have stolen some money, and then 3 thieves are there, and they're very honestly dividing. This is you worked hard this much, so and we were already decided. So you take this much money, take this much money, take this much money, and they're not also disturbing each other. They're allowing, okay, you have your money, you enjoy, I have my money, and they're very honestly divided. They're honestly enjoying. So this is honesty among thieves purposes. So it becomes like that. So as soon as we don't accept Krishna and we don't acknowledge Krishna the proprietor of everything, and Krishna is the enjoyer of everything, immediately we become thieves. And that's why we lose our peace. That's why the peace formula is there. So one becomes peaceless because he becomes a thief. Even though he's very pious, but if he's not Krishna conscious, he will not have real peace. He will not have peace because he's still a thief. That's why Prabhupada says in one purport that not doing devotional service itself is sin. One page says. So when you are engaging in devotional service, Lord, then only you can sin less. Being so-called pious person also, you are in that sense sinful because you're a thief. You're not acknowledging. You're going with your program of material enjoyment and saying that I am right. What is wrong with that? I want fame, I want name, I want wealth, and I'm legitimately acquiring it. And I'm an honest person, and I'm enjoying my life. So that is also not right, because that is also being sinful, because you're still a thief, and then we can never be happy. So here Prabhupada says that one should actually go back to God. One should give up that kind of pride. So when a person comes to this understanding, everything belongs to Lord, everything meant for his enjoyment, then he does not has any kind of positive mentality about anything. And that's why he's not attached to anything. And that's why he's not having aversion to anything. Because he sees everything only for sake of serving Krishna, that's all. So that's why, so when we think this is meant for my enjoyment, and I possess this, then that's why there is attachment, and that attachment leads to entanglement. Like in the last purport of this same 15th chapter, he writes very nicely. While one is performing devotional service in the association of pure devotees in full Krishna consciousness, there are certain things which require to be vanquished altogether. The most important thing one has to surmount is weakness of heart. This says first fall down is caused by desire to lord it over material nature. Same disease Prabhupada is mentioning. The first is the desire to lord it over material nature. So we assume that I am the Lord, and something is not right now. I'm not having the everything in my possession, but I desire. I want to lord it. I have to be the Lord of this material nature. So this is first fall down. And then one gives up the transcendental living service of the Supreme Lord. The second weakness of heart is that as one increases the propensity to lord it over material nature, because you want to be lord of this material nature, then you become attached to matter. So as soon as we try to lord over for the sake of material enjoyment, so then what happens? We become attached. So it becomes attached to matter and the possession of matter. And the problems of material existence are due to these weaknesses of heart. So first, we want to possess, and we want to enjoy, and then we become attached, and that leads to entanglement. Then we need this material world because we are bent upon trying to have material enjoyment. Then you want to possess this material world, and they will remain in the material world. Like that. So that's why that solution what is given is becoming prideless. And becoming prideless means acknowledging that everything belongs to Krishna. And that is only possible when we are in Krishna consciousness. Ishavasham idam sati. Everything belongs to God. Now, certain things in under my quota, but that quota also is not mine. Krishna's only. It's in my care. That's why we write, in care of. It's mine. It's not mine. It's Krishna's only. And it is meant for serving Krishna only. That attitude, one is prideless. So it is very clear definition. Sometimes we have, outside world, the definition, they also give the definition of pride, humility, so many things, right? But their definitions are not complete because they lack Krishna consciousness. So with all those qualities, what they may acquire with their definition, still they will remain stuck in material world. They will be known as a very humble people. This prideless person. People may glorify. But till we have not become Krishna conscious, we are actually proud. We are puffed up like that. And how that puffed upness is there, we discussed today. That. So the devotee of the Lord, he only wants to have attachment to Krishna. That's what in 7th chapter, beginning Krishna said, Maya Sakta Manopada, Yogam Vidhan Vidashraya. So by giving up our attachment, this material world, and developing our attachment to Krishna, then having love for the Lord and attachment for the Lord, and then we see this material world and everything in this material world as a paraphernalia to serve the Lord. Then we don't need this material world. Krishna will say, what you're doing there? You come to spiritual world. You can just serve me here. And even if his devotee is put in the material world, he simply uses everything in Krishna's service. So for him, then material and spiritual world doesn't make much difference. Because he's not having any attachment and there's no entanglement for him. Right? So he's free. That's why a devotee is free. Whether it's material world or the spiritual world, he is free. And how is free? Because he's attached to Krishna. And because he's attached to Krishna, he sees clearly everything belongs to Krishna, and then he wants to use everything in Krishna's service. That's like a son who sees his father's farm. So his father's farm, everything is his father's, and everything is meant for his satisfaction. So he will not try to exploit anything. And because sometimes one may be thief in his own home also, correctly. Sometimes there are father who they put case on their own son because he wants to usurp the property of the father. He doesn't acknowledge. So father, being magnanimous, wants to share everything with the son. When the son becomes naughty like that, so that's a problem because he will not do good to him and good to anybody. So same way when we become naughty and we want to be thief, want to hold on to this material world and have our program in this world of enjoyment, then it's actually no good for us. And it displeases Krishna also. So that's why the whole program of Krishna consciousness is to rectify this mentality of lording over and understand everything belongs to Krishna and I am simply servant of the Lord and everything is meant for Lord's service and Lord's enjoyment. And giving up that mentality and engaging in and this process of Krishna consciousness actually rectifies that mentality because more we engage in devotional service, Krishna being our eternal master and we being servant of Krishna, that becomes more and more part of our consciousness. So, so it's a cultivation. It's not just theory also. That's why we have a cultivation of Krishna. When we cultivate Krishna consciousness, then gradually this understanding is, not just theory, but it's a realization for devotee. And that's how he is, always engaging everything in Krishna service. And then that's how he is already in the spiritual world. So I'll pause here. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. Any comment or anything?
I heard that lecture by Prabhupada, one lecture by Prabhupada a couple of days ago. He was talking about to walk into the bank and he said, I renounce all the money in this bank. What does that mean? With money. And if you take the money, steal the money, and not go to farming, and renunciate is one. You can't renounce anything that doesn't belong to you.
Mm. We have to renounce that mentality that upon us.
Yeah, that you can.
Yudhishthira Maharaj was the richest person, but he was understanding that this was in law. That's what devoting and hearing all the things. And then people were understanding that everything long otherwise, people want to enjoy budget and they need
And actually, one can give up envy also. I was thinking that how, let's say the same father says, okay, so one son, you work in that pond, and you work in field, and both of you develop it. So now they are possessing something, but they're possessing on behalf of his father, and they're trying to develop to please the father only. So this son develops, and he's happy if it is developing. And this son also developing, and he'll not want to harm that. He's also pleasing the father. So when this Krishna consciousness is there, it solves all the problems. He will not be angry because he has love for the Lord, love for his father. And he sees how this is getting flourished. So nice. And something he may have more things, something he may have less things, but it doesn't matter. Ultimately, what is in my capacity, let me use it for Krishna's. And Krishna is pleased with it. One can be satisfied. Because different sons will have different capacity. And in this world also. Accordingly, they will be pleasing, serving the father. Somebody may become doctor, somebody will be engineer, somebody will be whatever. So different capacity. And they will be happy if they're doing their right, pleasing the father. So, acknowledge this, then Krishna consciousness is the real solution.
what I did. Krishna was only being sometimes
because we are having those tendencies as well.
If you want to enjoy things,